Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Ron Merritt. I'll be your chairperson this afternoon. And introducing the panel members, to my left is Carrie Linkletter. To her left is Cynthia Stevens. Representing the City of Winnipeg from the Assessment Department is Paul Took. And the recording secretary is Kara Belshaw. We'll be hearing an application for revision in regards to the assessment rule in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested has been described in each application, and we'll limit discussions to these matters. The statements that the assessor make or the applicant make at this hearing are sworn in testimony, and anybody speaking in these matters must be sworn in. Please be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by City Council and is independent of it, along with the City Administration. We make our decisions based on the evidence provided at the hearing and issue a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decision in respect to application may be appealed to the Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to application for exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included in the board's order. In respect to the hearing this afternoon, we will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. It will be then the assessor's testimony, followed by questions that the other applicant may have, and then will be the applicant's testimony, followed by questions. Each party will have the opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all evidence about the application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. So the process will repeat for each item on the docket this afternoon. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We'll ask our secretary to swear in Mr. Took and to affirm Mr. Newton.
Swear? Yeah. Please state your name.
Paul Took.
Do you swear the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please state your name.
Harrison Newfound.
Do you affirm the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
We'll be proceeding according to the docket, so we'll first deal with 1280 Pembina Highway. Mr. Took, whenever you're ready, you can take us through this property.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Property in question, file number 19-174, address 1280 Pembina Highway, roll number 03091544600. Mr. Chairman, I direct your attention to page 2. There's a sale shown at $2.395 million. This sale does not represent just the realty here. There's other properties that were involved. It's a multi-role sale. So please disregard the $2.395 million as it reflects values of other properties not under the bill here today.
Thank you, Mr. Took.
I have comparables here. The assessment here works out to, at page 4, we have some which is storage, some which is substandard basement, and some which is standard office finish, office retail industry. So I have comps for the storage information here, showing a range of $5 to $8.95 square foot. Rent comparables for C2, they're all in the area of town that we're looking at here, ranging from $10.75 to $14.50 per square foot. I note with interest that the mailer that we have here, way back after the photos, shows a monthly rent of $16,200 for this property. The leased area, however, is about half of what we have as leased area. I know that from the records in our system that this property was inspected in 2011 with the owner at that time. I don't know if there's been any changes as far as permits taken out since that time, but I'm sorry, I misspoke. I was looking at the land area. So our plan area is 9957 with a basement area of 2620. It's closer to what is shown here. And I know a previous hearing there was a lot of arguing about areas. So I'm looking at the assessment here of $1,505,000. Drive that with a cap rate of 7.9. Expenses 2%. Vacancy loss of 6%. We've used 1363 and 1365 for these C2 areas. We've used 856 and 638. 856 is one of the other C2 areas. I imagine, can't tell you what the difference is. Someone has made a judgment call on that. And storage at 638 square foot. So it appears to me, from the information that I've got, that this appears to be a fair assessment. So I'm asking for confirmation at 1.505 million. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Newfield, questions of the assessor?
Yes, you mentioned the sale. Thank you for pointing that out. Are you aware that it also included the business itself?
I knew that I couldn't use it with any accuracy as far as determining the value.
Okay, fair enough. Then you mentioned that the basement, do you bring any basement comparables?
I do have, no, I didn't bring any basement comparables. $2 a square foot is a very low rent. I've seen usable areas as high as $10, $12, but I don't know whether this is considered a usable area or whether the heights are acceptable. Odds are this may have been considered a throw-in with the lease. I would not suspect that the basement premise has a separate entrance, so I would not think that it would be able to be leasable independently.
Okay. And your comparables in, I guess, the office, retail, industrial, do you know if any of these include basements themselves that could be potentially not listed?
I do not have that information, sir.
But it would be possible that this leased area could also have a basement on top of it, correct? Is that fair to say? Or would you think that this would be reported with its basement included?
I can't answer that factually speaking.
Thank you. Your cap rate, that's model generated?
Yes, sir.
And that's, sorry, 7.9 is the top end of the range, I suppose? Or just
I would imagine.
Yeah, okay. Those are my questions, thank you.
I thank you. Ms. Linkletter?
Yes, did you have a chance to inspect this property?
No, I have not inspected this property, nor any of these other properties on this cycle.
Okay. Can you tell me when the last time this property was inspected?
I know that it was inspected in 2011 because there was problems with the areas. Since that time, I couldn't speak.
Okay. So it's got an effective age of 61 to 86. I guess an actual age of 53. Do you know what part of the building compromise, or is the 1986 portion? Would you say on page 3 of your brief, for the storage area, and I'm looking at the age, the property on Narren, for $5, because you're sitting at, what, $638? I'm just thinking, would you not agree that the Narren property, given the age, is sort of more
Well,
indicative of?
given the age, sure, that's not an unfair statement. Given the size of the lease
Right, I
comparison,
see it's bigger.
I hesitated to use $5 due to the size difference.
And your cap rate? looking for your,
At the very end, I have the Board of Revision addenda with our cap rate information.
that's what I'm looking for. Actually, I'm just looking for your little
It's on 6.
6,
Yeah.
thank you, the chart. So, are you using retail? Where on the chart is it falling? On page 6?
Well, there's no CMRST tuck here, so I assume, and this is an assumption, that the rate has been derived looking at these comparisons for actual retail comps that I have attached in the back of the brief. These are all chosen for us, shall I say, based on the information that the entire department has spent years collecting and going over and correcting. And, you know, we have access to the entire sales universe, shall we call it, the city of Winnipeg has every year. And the only information I have in support of cap rate is what you see on page 6, and my cap rate evidence at the very back of my property, my brief.
Okay, so, sorry, maybe I wasn't clear, so on page 6, which is your cap rate study, so my question is, I'm assuming this is under retail and not office, so I'm just wondering where it will be on your chart.
I would assume that it's under retail. As I said before, there's no CMRST information submitted, so I can't speak on which specific one would suit this property best.
Okay,
You know, the information which I have is best information that we have for the city of Winnipeg.
okay, thank you, that's all my questions.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens?
My questions are similar, so I think they've been answered. This almost looks like a strip, but it's a single business.
Yes.
In what appears to be a, yeah, so that's where I was thinking it might fall, but, so your answer was that the model would be taking similar type properties and developing that?
Yes.
Okay. On your workup, for the basement, just so that I understand, because I think you answered a question about this in your previous answers. The basement, you're not sure if it's actually usable or what is there, is that
Yes,
correct?
that's
Okay,
correct.
but it has been assessed at $2.33 a square foot regardless?
That's right.
Okay, well, maybe we'll hear about that then. Okay, I think that's all I had, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Took, I just want to follow up in regards to Ms. Stevenson's reconciliation. I'm looking at the applicant's picture of the property so I can know exactly what it is. So the end part is a 2-story, is it not? But referred to like
Certainly
a
appears to be.
mezzanine?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm trying to reconcile the numbers and equate it to the basement. So I think the basement you have is 1780. So is that just one little part, or is there another basement part? And it doesn't look like it based on the square foot, the rate per square foot.
Yeah, I can't answer that definitively, but I am assuming that the only area that we've charged for is the 1718 square feet of the basement.
Okay. All right, I thank you. Mr. Duffield, your presentation.
Indeed. Just taking you to my front page, a major difference, as I'm sure you've already pointed out in the area, is the basement. Our area is the same, so save for the 1718 that we did remove. Reason for that being is we don't really see there to be any rental value to this basement. when it's common for many retail sites to have some sort of access to some sort of storage basement, and generally that's not included in their leasable areas. When we look at our rents, many of them would have small storage. I can't tell you offhand which would be which, but a lot of them would include small storage basements that would be not included in that area, and we would just treat that as an amenity. And that's generally how the marketplace does it, and that's generally how brokers would be doing it if they were leasing it, which is what we are supposedly looking at today. Vacancy, we just, somewhat of a new approach Colliers has been taking is to no longer accept the vacancy rates, the non-recoverables, the structural reserve or shortfall. We've been looking at either site-specific, and if there isn't insufficient information, we're using market information sourced either through our own firm or through the Johnson report, which is available readily to purchase and to use for this purpose. So for our vacancy, under my request of 973, there is a strip 3.9 and Fort Garry 5.6. My page 4 is where that information is sourced from. Obviously, when what we're doing now is taking actual retail, when multi-tenanted retail sites, we're using their actual vacancies and applying it. But because this is an owner-occupied site, we're just looking at the market. So for the Johnson report, this is my page 4, he has strip malls, and that's the whole city, that's 3.9, and Fort Garry at 5.6. The reason, obviously, this site here is, like someone had pointed out, it does look like a strip mall, would be not the worst candidate for redevelopment for a strip mall, as the area and the style of the building. Of course, the cost of that would be immense, and that's not something we're looking at today. But the building itself does have some strip mall qualities, so we picked a midpoint between the Fort Garry area and a strip mall to use a 4.75% vacancy. That was rounded up to 4.8. And then the structural reserve is basically mostly on what we view as we have a range of 15 cents to $1 as to what would be an acceptable structural reserve, and that's money to basically accumulate in order to do major repairs when they're needed. Shortfall is site specific. I noted that it's not actually in the brief, but it would have been pulled out from the mailer. That would have been the actual reported costs the actual calculated taxes, recorded utilities, reported R&M, to create a shortfall for this building, 7.96. Now, generally what we've been doing is using parameter shortfalls. In the past, we are not doing that currently. We've decided that I think you'll probably see a lot of these where we're actually using a shortfall lower than the model, and we've just found it in our, for utmost fairness to use actual specific shortfalls when possible. The subject is an owner-occupied site. There is a small office on top of, or an office on top of the warehouse portion, a second floor office, and I guess sort of I call it a low-quality retail space on the main floor. It's a showroom. It's kind of a hybrid between an older industrial style and a retail. It is. You walk in there and it's just it's covered in carpets for your samples. We've applied a main rent of $10. This area is generally not the strongest for the rental market. There's just looking at properties on my page 3. We have a strip mall of 1467 Pembina, and that's the entirety of the strip mall, and its net rent of $9.26. And we applied a $10 for that main floor portion it's what we would call a low quality retail space. Another comparable, and we are going to hear it later today, is 1292 Pembina, and of course that is at 1154, but it is a much smaller site, so to use a 21 square feet when adjusted for economies of scale of $6,700 to $10 is a reasonable range. Cap rate, we are quite close. We are at an 8.5, and the city is at 7.9. You'll see I would contend a large disparity of cap rates for the day. If if I was presented a 7.9 on this property, I would have no issue with it. I do, however, based on our market evidence, we're still selecting an 8.5. And some cap rates that can be evaluated for comparison. 1799 Portage, although I would say a better location than this, similar style, however there's much more density on Portage for this, something like this. But the area is a transitional area that's not generating high quality retail rents or any large development. It is, you have to go a bit further south of Pembina for the newer market activity. So I guess what I'm saying then is our page 33, our cap rate 1799 Portage would be somewhat quite applicable. 3554 Pembina is in a newer area at 7.8 on page 34. Not a newer area, but an area that's seen a lot more multifamily development. That would be a 7.8% cap. And just to touch on my earlier comment, the sale 2.395 included, as the assessor did mention, the adjacent roll and the Curtis Carpet business itself. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nicol. Mr. Took, questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I look at your chart of comparables on page 3,
Yeah.
The column that's noted as size, that's like the leasable area or the size of the building?
Leasable area.
Leasable area? Okay. Mr. Chairman, I need some guidance here. There's information that I have in briefs which haven't been presented yet, which cast into doubt some of this information that I note on page 3 of the appellant's brief. Specifically, if I may have the leeway to go through this, and you can tell me if it's reasonable or not, or if I need to do other procedural things. But 1467 Pembina, I note Mr. Neufeld's own brief shows an area of 6,747 square feet. Whereas 1467 Pembina on page 3 shows 9,747 square feet. This would distort the rent, I imagine. Lower. For 1543 Grant. We both have the same area there. I have no objections to that.
Well, Mr. Took, I'd sooner proceed along and you can draw these issues up as they are encountered.
Okay, well, then at this point, I wish to swear in all my briefs as evidence on this property.
I will comment on that. It appears as 1467 is a typo, and the assessor is correct. I think, I suppose it wouldn't necessarily be the most comparable for the entirety of the building, but it is my third comp there is 6747.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay. Ms. Lightfoot?
Yeah, did you have a chance to inspect this property? Mr. Neufeld?
Not recently. I have been in it in the past, though.
Okay, so have you been in this space, this sub-basement space?
No, I have not, no. It's, I do know it is not separately accessible. It is only accessible through the main portion of the building.
Okay.
It doesn't have a separate entrance.
Did you speak to the owner about the condition of it?
Condition of the basement?
The sub, yes.
I mean, it's just in our notes as being a substandard basement that has no separate access whatsoever.
Okay, but do you know whether it's being used or not?
I believe they're using it for storage, yes.
They are using it
Yes.
for storage, okay.
But again, my contention being that many of our comparables would have basement spaces for storage as well, without that listed area.
Okay, that's all my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens?
Hey, just on your workup, so your non-recoverables, is that 7% you worked that up at?
Non-recoverables, no, that's at the very bottom, that's the actual, expenses that are, my brother did this, he didn't put it in here. I know that what he does is take it from the mailer. The 5067 would be the, reported expenses and the actual
So
non-recoverable
so these are
expenses.
actual.
I believe so, yeah.
And can you explain to me your structural reserve again?
The structural reserve, yes.
I haven't seen this on one of your briefs
Yeah,
before.
it's a newer concept, and it's not new concept at all, it's based on theory, but it's something that we've decided, we're no longer using the 2% as a structural reserve for the other. We're just basing it on actual physical condition of the building and based
So
on.
this is in replacement of the 2% that the
Yes.
city has put on
Yes,
expenses?
correct.
And your non-recoverables, the workups are actual?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And you are not aware of what's happening in the basement
It's
as
used for
well?
storage, no, it is used for storage,
It is, okay.
yeah.
Okay, that's all I have, thanks.
Thank you. Why is there a discrepancy between the cities and your square footage?
The basement.
Is it the basement in question, and that's it?
Correct.
Okay. Has this been going for a number of years in regards to discrepancy?
I would imagine,
Okay.
isn't based on
Okay.
the, yeah.
Okay. What is the, you happen to know the average increase for these type of properties? Or should that be to the city?
Yeah, we don't generally look
Okay.
at that,
Okay.
especially when,
Okay,
yeah.
that's
yeah,
fine.
It's not something we generally have.
You had mentioned, you had said something about you'd be happy with the
Well, no,
the 7.9?
What, yeah, I mean,
Like,
the 8.5 is our
heard that
like
too.
cap, but I don't think we're very far off, and generally,
no,
like I
but in
said,
just, you had.
in reality, you'll see it in the rest of the day. I would contend that if it's a 7.9 on this, it should be on the rest of the properties, and that's just.
Well, we're only dealing with this one for
Correct.
the time being, so, did you mention that, or did I hear incorrectly?
A 7.9 would not be completely unreasonable.
As Ms. Stevens said, we talked about there's a new category here that you're going along with, it's called structural reserves. So,
Yeah,
and that
so-
would vary in regards to the number of square feet that are.
Size, the construction
Yeah,
type,
yeah. So
condition.
I've seen some that, like in this one here, is 35 cents a square foot.
Correct.
Seen 50, I've seen $1.
Correct.
Okay, so,
Yeah, and I guess the general idea is that the 2% generally doesn't encapsulate structural reserve for site
yeah.
specific.
The reason why I bring that up is because I guess all your presentations are going to have the structural reserves, so we might as well.
Correct, yes, yeah, and it's just, the 2% can, obviously a building like say this,
Yeah.
or something of an
And
industrial
also,
size can vary.
I guess, traditionally, I guess it's the city's at $6.50 a square foot for shortfall,
Correct.
and you're, higher.
Yes, and that's just based on this site.
And also, just one little note, normally, in your presentation, you have a vacancy rate of 4.8, and the city's at 6, so.
Correct, and that's,
Um,
we're using market information for this, our own market information.
Okay,
Yeah, sorry.
I think, Mr. Duke, summation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I note with interest that the rent brought in on the mailer is higher than what we have here in our brief. I take exception with using site-specific vacancy at 4.8% when it's 0.
That's not, I've never said site specific for this.
Well,
This is
you
not
are
correct.
making a
This is not a conversation,
representation.
this is summations, okay? Okay, so continue, please.
My apologies, if I misunderstood that. as represented as site-specific, then I apologize and withdraw the comment.
Thank you.
I still believe it's a fair assessment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Newfeld?
I just, obviously this is a new approach, I'm not sure if you've seen it, but we do not have any faith in the model and we're using site-specific evaluations. Now, this vacancy is still market-driven because the assessor is correct, it was 0. This is an owner-occupied site, the mailer to rent has no bearing on its value whatsoever. The vacancy is based on the, in this case, the Johnson report. Shortfall would be site-specific. Thank you.
I thank you. We'll go to the next property just a little further down the street. I don't care which way you go.
Thank you, Mr.
12
Chairman.
12:20.
The next one, here's 1220, I believe.
1220.
Yes, 1220 Pembina Highway. File number 19
Oh, okay.
dash.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, no, it's quite all right.
Sorry.
All right. 19, file number 19-4605. Roll number 0309027100. Property in question is 1220 Pembina Highway. If we're doing site-specific valuations on these properties, then I would suggest that the mailer has some bearing on the valuation. I'm looking at a rent of $35,689 gross.
For what
on
page
mailer.
is the mailer?
It is right after the pictures.
After the, it's got it.
So that is portrayed as a gross number here, so we accept that as a gross number. The rents that we have used are $13.84 a square foot for the main floor and a basement of $258 a square foot. Referring to the fact that it likely is not demisable, it is, probably has the same entrance as the property in whole. We've used 6% vacancy, 2% expenses, shortfall is $650. Overall cap rate is 7.4%. I have leases here between the range $16 and $19 a square foot. They bracket the area of this property quite nicely. However, these are all newer properties. So based on this property being older, excuse me, my estimation is that our assessment of $429,000 is fair and equitable, and I'm asking for support of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Newfield?
Yeah, you mentioned the rent applied at $16 is a gross rent? Is that what you said, sorry?
I just looked at the mailer itself and said $35,689 gross. I didn't actually calculate it. I do notice that the property lease on page 2 shows $16 a square foot. It does not make the note there that it is a gross rent. It says net rent. Now, I haven't calculated that. Shall I calculate that for you?
That's okay, thank you. Your cap rate is model generated,
Yes, sir.
and this is based on 7.4, be lower than 7.4 is that would be based on age or size, is that correct? Or?
Yeah, based on age and size theoretically, and area of the city.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia?
So your comps on page 3, they all seem to be, the rents are higher, and you said they are newer, but they also are smaller space, correct?
Well, 2 are smaller, and I believe 3 are larger.
Because there's our leasable area, because you're looking, because
Yeah.
the basement, yeah, sorry, I was looking at the total leasable area, okay.
My apologies, I don't
Yeah, no, that's,
really
that's fine.
try to find comps for
Yeah.
basement.
Yeah, okay. So in terms of the main floor, they're similar, yeah. Okay,
Yes.
sorry, so they
No,
ignore
not
that. And as far as you know, the basement is being used just for storage?
As far as we know.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's all I had, thanks.
I thank you. Ms. Lindblad?
Yeah, Mr. Took, page 4, when it talks about the substandard basement, what in the city's definition does it make it substandard?
From my perspective, and the way it's been put across to me, is that the basement might have some, well, let's put it this way, it's not wheelchair accessible, that's for sure, and there won't be any elevator going to the basement. That the stairs may be cramped or at a poor angle, that the height of the basement may not be a standard, let's call it 7 feet, it could be lower in spots. Basically, I look at it as, if I walk in and I hit my head, that's not a usable basement anymore.
Okay. And you might draw that conclusion regarding the height, because it was built in 1955.
Definitely 1955 basements would not be any 8-foot basements, that's for sure. It's not unreasonable to make that assumption.
And again, as stated, you have not inspected this property.
No, I have not inspected this.
Do you know the last time the city inspected it?
This property, no, I don't know.
Okay. Sorry, just looking back. So you've given this a cap rate of 7.4, even though it has an effective age of 65?
Yes, and, I mean, with respect to my page 6, it's within the range. For all, basically all regionals, although I don't pretend to say that all of these regionals would, all these retail cap rates would apply.
But you don't know the overall condition of the building, if it's average, good,
No,
sub-average?
I would say based on the rent, it's considered just an average.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Took? I don't have any questions.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Newfield, the floor is yours.
Thank you. We were using a rent of $16 per square foot for the site. When looking at the mailer on page 3, it appears as we've just used the total the rent income site. It doesn't show whether or not this hydro water heat is recovered. My assumption would be that the small amount means that it was recovered, and we were just using the contract rent for that. There was a maintenance and repair cost of $13,000. When we look at that, that would be directly indicative of a higher structural reserve cost, as well as a high R&M cost. The vacancy today is based again on the Johnson report, 6.1 being a midpoint of Fort Garry at 5.6 on my page 4. And retail, 6.5, the whole city is 6.5, and retail, entire retail vacancy. So we picked the midpoint of that for 6.1. The shortfall is $10 based on taxes on the building, utilities, and $3.50, I don't know far now. Cap rate at 8.5. $400,000 for 2018 assessment was a verbal recommendation made by the assessor at the hearing, which was then appealed. But we are using contract rent for this, so I won't go through the comparable specifically for this property. That is all my presentation. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Took, questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 3 of your brief, Mr. Neufeld.
Yep.
The maintenance repair, do you know what that number represents?
The 3.53.
No, I'm sorry, the 13,134 on the mailer on your page.
Oh, on the mailer, I do
Yeah,
not know
sorry.
the work that was done. No, sorry.
So, like, we don't know if this is capital repair or this is like.
If it was
normal
capital,
maintenance?
yeah, I mean, if it was capital repair, we would contend that it would be part of the non-recoverable, so it is still a cost that's required for the landlord to pay in order to keep the tenant in his building. But again, the exact nature of it, I do not have.
Okay, okay. Thank you, I have no further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens?
I just want to make sure that I'm looking, your photograph shows a Scotiabank, and the city's photograph shows a gold recycling. I'm
Yeah.
assuming this is an old Scotiabank, it used to be a Scotiabank, but now there's a new tenant in there, is that correct?
That would be, yeah.
Or is it the other way around?
Yeah, sorry, the lease start for KMG was 2017, so this would have been the
So it was a
tenant-
bank, and now it's?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
This would be recycling old pictures from the last brief, apologies for that.
So, and just in terms of your rent, although in terms of the total rent, you and the city are quite close together, so this is not a huge issue, I don't think, but I'm just trying to make sure that, are you just applying $16 to the main floor, is that correct?
Well, it's the entirety of the building, is because that is the contract rent, so it is for the basement as well. That
And
is
you've
what's
applied
paid.
$16 to the basement?
Well, if we were to add in the basement, it would actually have the value go down, because the 35,423 would remain the same regardless. When you're adding the basement in, the shortfall would then capture that. And same with the structural reserve, actually.
So you're going with the actual rent and you've charged
Yes,
that
and-
amount against the entire space?
Right, and if
Okay.
you could add it to make it to 44,28, but then the value would be dropped even further down.
Okay, and your cap rate, do you think a property like this would be, because of its size, would be a little easier to sell than, say, a bigger one like we talked about previously?
Easier to sell because of the size. Generally, when investors are looking at it, it's all dependent on tenant strength. KMG, potentially because there's only one tenant, it would be easier to only lease out a single space. You're only dealing with a single space, so there is some merit to that point. I wouldn't say it's gospel though.
Okay, that's all I have, thanks.
I have no questions, thank you.
I just have to work out a figure here. Why do if I times the square footage,
Okay.
and it looks like the main floor,
Okay.
2214 times 16 gives me $35,000, 425.
Correct, and that's what
Okay.
we're using. Yeah, I know,
Yes.
and the mailer shows 35,689.
Well,
is
but
what you're
I
asking.
mean, the total building is 4428, including the basement,
Including the basement, correct.
okay? So,
If you were to make the change, like I said, we're using a net rent based on what's paid.
okay,
So to add in a basement, you'd be driving it down further, and that just didn't seem reasonable. And that's
Yeah.
why we don't even include basements in the first place, because that's not how they're contracted.
okay. And the cap rate, you're at the 8.5%, eh?
Correct.
And, okay, summation on either party? Mr. Duke?
No, thank you, Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Neufeld?
Just that this kind of proves that valuing basements is not a good way to do it. It would drive the value down if we did it.
Okay.
We'll go to 1543 Grant Avenue. Mr. Duke, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. File number 19-4600, excuse me, roll number 12-0-523-690-00, address 1543 Grant Avenue. We have a 2020 assessment of $664,000. If I might direct you to page 10 of my brief, here's a picture of the front of the building. This is what it looks like from the street. The pictures before that are various aerial photos just showing that the parking is all back. There's sort of an official parking at the side there, which maybe is the owner or maybe one of the tenants parks there in any case. I'm looking at my the mailer here, which is just past the picture, the next page there. We show a rent income of $67,300, which is a gross rent. My NOI is lower than that, $61,032, but my NOI is based on net rents here. The rents that I have here for comparison run between 1,200 square feet up to 3,372 square feet, and they run a range of $10 up to $12 a square foot. From my perspective, with a rent of $10.92 and two other rents of $11.78, it appears that this assessment is fair and equitable. We've used a cap rate of 8.4% on this, vacancy loss 6%, expenses of 2%. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm requesting a confirmation of $644,000. Again, cap rates based on my place of works generated cap rates, which are based on all the information that we receive from property owners in the city of Winnipeg. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Newfield, questions?
Yes, this subject is in River Heights, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and the cap rate of 8.4, the effective year built is 1959. Earlier we had a 1955 on Pembina for 7.9. Can you explain why the cap rate would be half a point higher in River Heights?
It could be anything from the age of the property to investment quality. 8.4% cap rate is within a reasonable range suggested by the comps that I've brought in and by the cap rate studies that we have here based on the 20th and 80th percentile. So I don't have an explanation for you why it's 8.4 on this one.
Okay, thank you.
I thank you. Ms. Stevens?
Well, that was going to be my question, just because in comparison to what we've seen previously, this seems a little off to me, the 8.4.
That it should be.
Well, it just seems, it doesn't seem consistent with what we've seen, I guess, is basically what I was,
Okay.
in terms of the age of the property and the sizes. I mean, it is a different neighborhood, I don't know if that, though I would think
I wouldn't expect that
that
to
should
make
make
a difference.
No, that's exactly what I was, okay. I think that's all I have then, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lakeladder?
Yeah, do you have in your notes when this property was last inspected?
Unfortunately, I do not.
So then I'm assuming you can't really speak to the condition.
No, I have no information on condition on the inside at all. All I have is exterior pictures.
That's all my questions, thank you.
Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Took, there's no basements in here at all?
No, these are all main floor areas that we've shown, whether there's basement or not,
Okay.
we haven't assessed anything for
Yeah.
them.
And this is all model driven?
Definitely the cap rate is model driven.
Mhm.
You could say that, yeah, you could probably say that everything on my brief is model driven.
Mhm. And I'm just wondering, there was a question, I might as well pursue it. Hemina Highway is at 7.4, and this is River Heights, and it's higher. Hmm. Based on the age?
I could say it could be something as easily
Okay.
as someone having ticked a box to say that this isn't as desirable. So, I mean, what it actually is, can't give you an
Okay.
answer to that.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Newfield?
Thank you. So for our net rent that we've used, it's for 53,460. If you go to my page 3, it is the net operating income of 50,000 with the property management of 3365 added back in. Reason for that being is that it's then taken off below the line as a non-recoverable. This is actual property management, so this 53,460 is net without property management. Vacancies applied. Property management is deducted as a non-recoverable expense, and that was an actual fee that is paid for the site. Structural reserve is 2,700. That's I guess you could say a midpoint of our range, just based off of the building itself. There's some similar building styles of everything we're seeing today, so a range of 50 cents to 35 cents is reasonable for probably any of these. Shortfall is $8.54, and that is calculated based on the expenses that are showing. The vacancy that we did use is lower than the city. What we're seeing in River Heights is a 0.8% vacancy, and a strip mall vacancy of the entire city of 3.9. So we picked a midpoint of that, 2.35, and we're applying 2.4. The shortfall is site specific as well. The 8.5 cap, we're different by 0.1%, so I won't get far into it, but I would contend that an 8.5 is a very suitable cap rate for a building like this. The subject does have basements. They are used for storage. That was my presentation. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Took, questions?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Stevens?
So you don't have a breakout of the actual rent that's being realized on the 4, well,
Between each
it
tenant,
looks like
you
2,
mean?
is there 3 tenants?
Oh, correct. No, we just applied the
You
net.
so you just took a base rate for the entire space,
Correct.
even though it's divided up with different
Correct.
tenants, okay.
And that's just how anyone would
Based on
a
the
purchase.
actual rent that's being realized.
Right. Yeah, then a purchaser would be looking at what
Yeah.
it's capable of generating.
Okay, that's all I have, thanks.
I thank you. Ms. Linklater?
So, page 1 of your brief, the 990, that's the actual like rent?
That is the 53,460 is the net amount, correct? Yes. And that's that's before management, because it's then deducted after the vacancy. I guess the net rent would be really 50,000, which is lower, but then we'd be taking on management twice in that situation.
Did you have a chance to inspect the property?
I've been in it, but not for official businesses, no. I've been told there is a basement by the owner. The owner has indicated there is a basement used for storage. I have not seen it myself, though.
Oh, okay.
We have,
Do you know the space on that basement?
we wouldn't measure it. It's not something that we would consider as rentable area, so it's not something we would need to measure or see it need to.
Okay. That's all my questions, thank you.
So, Mr. Newfield, your presentation, I guess, is $9.90.
Correct?
And that the premises, the 3 premises or tenants have exclusive use for the basement. And that's the rate that is applied for?
Yeah, and it's just the 990 is we're working backwards from the 53,000 in order to calculate that. So the 53,460 was calculated based on the mailer that's on the page 3, and then we did the 990 backwards for the whole building.
And you are fairly close to the city's cap rate?
Correct.
All right. Summation, Mr. Took?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Neufeld?
Well, thank you.
Okay. Let's go. Can we take a 5-minute break?
Certainly.
Is that okay? We'll call the meeting back to order, and we're gonna go to 1292 Pembina Highway. Mr. Took, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 1292 Pembina Highway. File number 19-175, roll number 030-900-501-00. This property at 1292 Pembina Highway is quite a well-aged property, built in 1949. It currently has a Donald's Pizza in it right now with some small second floor space that's used as an office. If I might direct your attention to page 2. Subject sale history, again, we're looking at that $2,395,000 sale that doesn't represent this property, it represents other properties as well, so please disregard that. I assume that the December 5th, 2008 sale corresponds to just this property, so there's a data point that I can point to, 240,000. I have comps on my page 3, which first floor range 1770 to, $12.86 a square foot up to $19 a square foot. And second floor leasable areas, quite a range between 678 square feet and 4899 square feet. The actual is only 504 square feet. However, the $15 does not look, the $15, which is the highest rent for the second floor comps, just doesn't relate to the property as a whole here. I would go with the rents that I've used here at $12.86 and $10.61 a square foot. Previous experience, nothing too current, but from 2 cycles ago, I did some investigation into first floor and second floor differences, and they worked out to roughly $2 a square foot, so I'm comfortable with that. If I could direct your attention to the mailer here on just after the pictures. We have a gross rent of $34,500. Mr. Neufeld has informed me that generally speaking, there's an insurance number on that the insurance has been shown to be $1,165 per year, both after the year in question and before the year in question. So if Mr. Neufeld was to bring in information showing the $1,165 is fair for insurance, I'm okay with that. I don't think this is really fair for me to say, oh, inconsistent information, ask for reversal. That's not really a fair case to do this. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm looking at a rent overall of $26,849. The gross rent of $34,500 is higher than that. You may have questions for me regarding the 7% cap rate on this highly desirable property. I don't have any answers for you. It seems anomalous to me as well. So just to head that one off the pass. Other than that, you know, the assessment with a perhaps more reasonable cap rate based on my income would be fair and equitable. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, questions?
I think it would be wrong to ask some questions after that. I'm okay, no questions, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Stevens?
And you headed off my question, so I'm good, thank you.
I'm ready.
Ms. Lakeledder? summation either party?
I haven't presented.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I
Oh, yeah,
really don't
yeah,
think I do.
you know, we concluded, well, we were looking at the cap rates. Mr. Newfield, your presentation.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
And that is my presentation. Sorry, I'm all thrown out of whack now.
Okay, take a deep breath.
That heater, feel it. Okay, our rent we applied was based on the mailer. Now, as I just went through it with Mr. Took, it was always reported that the insurance and property taxes were paid by the owner. This year they didn't. I have 2018's mailer showing that they did. I actually spoken to her. I had spoken to her, that was based on a conversation. She didn't quite understand how it was filled in 2017. I told her that any costs she would incur must be reported. She understood that, and this is the same as Curtis Carpets that sold the business. So then, when we did our calculation, adding in, to get the 25,121, that was based off of the insurance and the property taxes that are not recovered. We're not very far off on rent either. I think the cap rate is self-evident. I won't get into much. With just a comment, my general suspicion as to why a cap rate like this is chosen, and please cut me off if you have to. If this were to be sold, it would be sold for a different purpose. We'd be looking at something like land value. A 7% would be more attributable to that sale, but when we're looking at the use of its continued and value based on that use, you have to use a cap rate that is based on that use. If this were to be sold other than how it did, which was just a next door continuation of the status quo, it would be for complete redevelopment. And that would be my opinion. Vacancy is the same idea as before. It's a halfway point between a retail of the entire city and a Fort Garry. And shortfall is based on the insurance that is not the insurance that's not covered. Yeah, it's not covered. And the structural reserve is just based on age and the style of the building. Thank you. I should have presented.
I thank you, Mr. Newfield. Mr. Took, questions of the applicant?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you have any information about that December 2008 sale?
No, I do not, no.
Okay.
No.
Okay, good enough. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no.
That's all my questions.
I would expect, maybe I shouldn't say too much, but their next door, I expect it came up for late and they purchased it. I imagine that's real. Just the market value.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens?
No questions.
Ms. Linklater?
Yeah, did you have a chance to inspect this property?
Yes, no, I have not.
Was this previously brought to the board
Yes, yeah.
last cycle?
Yeah, it's been brought to the board for a few cycles now. I can bring you the decision if you like. It was at 318, reduced to 260.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Newfield, I remember this property specifically, and I guess there's an affiliation with the property next door too?
Yes, this is owned by Curtis Carpets.
Yeah.
That would have been the first property we heard today, the 1280.
Okay. So does Curtis Carpet own both these buildings?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
But Gondola Pizza is still there?
Yeah, Gondola Pizza is an arm's length tenant.
Yeah, and they've been there for a number of years?
They've been there for a while, before I've been working on it.
Since I was a child.
Oh,
A long time.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume it was up for sale next door, and they purchased it thinking they might use it, and they never have.
Okay. I don't have any further questions. Mr. Took, summation?
No, Mr. Chairman, nothing to say. Thank you.
Mr. Newfield?
No idea.
Okay. Okay. 1166 Pembina Highway, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 1166 Pembina Highway, file number 19-4482, roll number 030-904-99000. Property in question is a store, parking at the back. One-story building built in 1930, effective age of 1939. We have the subject lease at $11 in 2007. So that is on page 2. Page 3, I have a number of leases that bracket this fairly well, between $8 a square foot and $16 a square foot, so that's not really helping that much, unfortunately. We have assessed the property at $13.92 for the main floor and $2.31 for the basement. I imagine the basement is just part of this. How do I put this? Was likely thrown in. Likely has no prospect of being independently leased or separately leased, and is likely, although I can't say for sure, likely this would be used for storage, perhaps office for the property. In any case, we've used a rent of $13.92 square foot, which seems supportable based on the rents that I've got here on page 3. We've used a 7.65% cap rate. I have no explanation why it's 7.65 as opposed to any of the other cap rates we have here seen here today. It's quite a small building. Main floor, 990 square feet. We've come up with an assessment of $172,000. I feel that the assessment would be close to that in any case. I'm not comfortable giving a recommendation because these leases bracket this assessment quite nicely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm asking for confirmation of $172,000. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Newfield?
Yeah. So you're saying you're not making a recommendation because the age of the lease, right? Or what was the?
Basically,
sorry, the reasoning
yeah,
between the difference.
my reasoning behind not making a recommendation is that leases, market leases are bracketing that. I'm seeing some that are higher, some that are lower.
Okay.
A prudent buyer would look at what's in place, but would also look at what potentially they could get. So I'm not comfortable saying that the actual rent in place that was put in 2007 is respectful of market value.
Okay. No, those are my questions. Thank you.
Ms. Stevens?
Further to that point, the comps that you've shown are considerably newer effective year than the subject, correct?
Yes, they certainly are.
So would that not affect the rental rate that this building could command?
That would definitely affect that. If I could kind of put a note to that as well. You know, a 1930 building in operation with no improvements since that time, it's not likely. So I don't want to say that it's the same age effectively as these properties, but I would say that 1939 probably understates it a little bit.
You suspect there's been some improvements there?
Yes, yes.
And you mentioned you're not sure about, well, that the cap is model driven and, yeah, okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I had, thanks.
I thank you. Ms. Linkletter?
Okay, so you suspect that something has been done to the building, but you did not inspect it.
No, I have not inspected this property.
again, do you know the last time it was inspected?
Unfortunately, no, I don't have that information.
So then I'm gonna assume that it has been inspected at some point, so then would not the effective age have been changed?
If all things went according to plan, I would say yes. Even speaking from my own perspective, I would look at these properties and try to come up with a fair value and overlook the fact that the effective age is way higher than it should be or way lower than it should be. And after doing this for a few years, I was informed, hey, look, it's about trying to instruct the model to come up with a value that's as close to reality as possible. So, in answer to your question, yes, it should definitely have been looked at, and if it had been inspected, it should be upgraded. Does it surprise me that it wasn't upgraded? Not greatly.
Because of the size. That's what I'm thinking,
Because of the width,
the size.
the size. Well, yeah, I mean, there's only so much you can do on a property that big. And, yeah, sorry, didn't want to keep talking there.
No, no, go ahead.
You know, I think we had gravity ventilation back in the 30s, and I'm sure there's some sort of ventilation system in there now. You know, things like that, very general.
So then, I'm just gonna ask, do you think it's reasonable to put a rent on a basement area for a 1930 building? Because
Well,
I
again,
can only imagine.
yeah, again, any building I've been in that's that is that old, I have almost got stitches on my head for. It's likely that the building would be just a throwhead in the basement. I don't want to say that it's true in this case, because without inspecting it, I can't say that. But it would be my expectation that the basement would be limited at a storage only, and perhaps even limited further from there if there's any sort of problem with the foundation, if it's cracking, if there's water coming in. If perhaps Mr. Newfeld has inspected it and can give us information on that. But I'm just dealing with suppositions at this point.
And this is more of a curiosity question, for a 1930 building, what would the basement have been made out of? Would it actually be poured concrete, or would it be a stone foundation, or would it be could it possibly be a dugout?
If it was a dugout, we would have never put it in the beginning. A dugout basement is
Yeah.
no potential at all, and it's just for basically the heating for the building. I used to own a building from the 20s, residential rent, and they did use concrete, but no insulation. I've seen field stone foundations, and I think those were more from the 1800s, perhaps the early 1900s for a nicer building.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This, I guess, this used to be Clinton's Cleaners.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And now, based on the pictures, it's something else?
Yes, sir. I believe it's still owned by Clinton's, but based on the picture, it's this Excellence Denture Clinic.
And you never had a chance to, you know, look or visit the property at all, or?
No, sir.
No. So, and I guess the basement is maybe 50%, you know, but they're around, you know, I just did the quick math and.
I can only go by the information we've got here, and it's showing about half, yeah.
Okay.
Now, as to whether that basement contributes value to the overall,
Yeah.
would be a good decision for the board to make.
Okay. I thank you. Mr. Newfield, the floor is yours.
Can I just have a quick follow-up question?
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, and just to clarify, you had mentioned 1930, you would suspect an inspection would update that age, is that what you said? Or did I miss it?
I would you,
Sorry, I
it's
didn't,
okay.
I didn't
No,
know
no,
that,
no,
I was.
no, let me just sort of re-answer that,
Sure.
for
Yeah,
lack of a better
please.
term. If I went to a building that was built in 1930, knowing what I know now, I would say there's no way it's still in operation if it's shown as an effective age of
Okay.
1939.
Okay, that's fair.
Now, having said that, in the past, I've not done that because it didn't occur to me to try to instruct our computerized mass appraisal system to do the information more correctly. So I was focused on appeal and getting a good value for the appeal as opposed to instructing the system into the future.
Well, I guess so if you're saying a 1930 building would not really be in operation, but the model that it's generated the rent on is based on a 1930 building, is that correct? Or is that, so is there?
It would be anything under a certain age would be in one category. So they may be saying anything older than 1950, anything older than 1960.
Okay, so at a certain point.
Yeah, there's
it's-
a cutoff
yeah,
there
okay.
somewhere, yeah.
Okay, so then if this was updated, it would probably go to 1950 and it would make a difference anyway.
Well, and
Maybe.
yeah, it theoretically should be higher. Now, I might be giving away too much here, but there's no rhyme or reason to how our,
Okay, I
how
think that's.
all of our assessors
Okay.
do age variance. There's the right way according to the book, and then there's the eyeball method,
Right.
and then there's the, let's get someone who's been doing this for 6 months to eyeball them all.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, thank you, because that answers that. Great, appreciate it.
Your presentation.
Thank you. I can go this side. You don't want to skip me? This, we actually didn't have 17's mailer for whatever reason when we made this up. Our rent is based on what was provided to us by the owner, and it is the same that is put in the mailer. We have a non-recoverable of $1,500. Now that's based on the insurance that the owner pays, but it was an old value. The assessors now has it at the assessor's evidence shows that the insurance is $642. That would make us, in a building like this, and percentage-wise, it would make enough of a difference, but our non-recoverables of $1,500 would be more suited to be $672 in this case. The rent that was chosen was the actual rent paid. This property was Quinton's dry cleaner. Quinton's was using it as a dry cleaner for a long time, and since have moved into more of a commercial style of dry cleaning where they do uniforms. They don't really need storefronts like this, so they didn't sell any off, they've just been renting them. They're all, the properties they do are of old vintage, and of course 1930 is showing. 1930 would have an immense amount of problems. The rent that is applied is the $10,009, and I do want to reiterate, if the basement was added and calculated, that 73,000 request would probably go somewhere closer to 65, and that would be because the shortfall would capture the basement and then drive the value down further. Instead, we've just looked at the actual net rent on the plan area, as that would be likely if by some miracle this was resold for to just maintain its current use, it would be how it was, this purchase was based on. I would contend that this would not sell for investment sales. This was, looking at the entire area with so much product, a real estate product that's so eightfold, it would likely be only resold for redevelopment, and in which case it would be a completely different tear down and would be costs. So I don't really think that there is much in more terms of identically similar style caps, because it's just, it is very difficult. So we do look at the market. When we look at the market, we look at what we have for strip malls, and they're all about, give or take 8%. This subject would then be, on my front page, adjusted based on the size mainly and the age. Lack of parking is a huge factor. Location isn't necessarily the greatest. It's a portion of Pembina that is not seeing much commercial activity as of yet. So for that reason, we did select 9.5, and a request of 73,000. Thank you. Oh, sorry, and the vacancy, just to reiterate, it's the same for all the properties on this block. We use market vacancies for that based on Johnson reported information and our own information. And the shortfall is site specific in this case. And that's my presentation.
I thank you, Mr. Newfield. Mr. Took, questions?
I have no questions, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Stevens?
More of a comment than a question. I think with this kind of a building, it would be useful to maybe, especially, like you have assessed the basement space, correct?
I have not made any, no, I haven't. The $10,009 is what's.
Yeah, that's the rent, and
Yeah,
you take, yeah.
so, we didn't add a
Yeah,
basement there.
because it could be almost, this is the kind of building where it would be helpful to have interior pictures to see what's actually going on,
I
you know?
agree. Yeah,
And, so
no.
it's hard for us to, so that's a comment more than a question, and that's all I
Yeah,
have,
that's
thanks.
fair, and I appreciate that. I would love to be able to bring in interior pictures as much as I can, and we try, but there weren't any file for this.
Okay, that's all I have, thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Linkletter?
Yeah, sorry, I may have missed it. Did you inspect this property?
I haven't expected this
No.
one.
So nobody in your office inspected
Oh,
it?
Rocky's definitely inspected it,
Like
yes. Yeah.
last,
I can't answer that, I'm not sure.
okay. So you have,
He used to have time to go to all his sites, and it's no time anymore.
so you have no notes on the condition?
I mean, I've seen the property, it's the 1930s. It would, the assessor said that it is reasonable, the effective date should be newer than 1939, but it would be past 50s range, I would imagine.
Sorry, so when you say you've seen the property,
Well, I
you've
mean,
driven past?
Yes, yeah,
Okay,
and I
thank you.
often.
Just wanted to clarify
Look
that.
that off, I stare at them when I'm stuck in traffic. Oh, hey, I gotta talk about that one day. I'm often stuck in traffic here, so.
Okay. So and just mainly again, curiosity,
Yeah.
there's no customer parking.
No, yeah, and that's, we call.
Interesting, being
we-
a,
It's in the back, but
Oh,
it's
it's-
minimal.
Oh, sorry, I don't know why he said no, but he put coverage ratio of 3, if there was 0 parking, that would be a 0 for an adjustment. No just means not very much really, so that, like, a lot of these buildings, like, when we compare it to strip malls, they have their own parking, so that's the cap adjustment.
I was just curious if this had been a dry cleaning drop off. If there was
Yeah,
no parking.
and I'm maybe thinking customer might be his way of saying there's enough of the employees to park, but not anyone else.
Right, right, okay. And I'm assuming by page 1 of your brief, you brought this before the board last
Yes.
time?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Just doing one calculation here. So Mr. Newfield, I guess in just looking at your brief,
Yes.
you sometimes look at the old assessment and compare it to the new one?
Yeah.
And, normally, as a rule of thumb or a check, you would probably say, well, how much is it increase?
Yeah, and I guess.
And like, in
sorry.
this case here, it goes up from the previous
Correct.
58%.
Correct.
Okay. So,
I,
there's red flags that go up. It adds questions, that's what I'm saying. And like, for you to come, we don't know whether the old assessment is right, so it's not really fair to talk about that. But
Okay.
when you're doing an evaluation, like you're coming in at 73,000
Correct.
and, you're $100,000 apart. So you know, it raises questions, it should raise questions for yourself, let alone, you know, the board members that sit here, you know, so.
I mean, I suppose it's an opinion of value that we make every time.
Yeah.
It's based on market evidence, and in certain situations, it's not necessarily perfect, but I think a site like this.
Well, we try to be fair
Right,
and reasonable.
right,
okay?
absolutely. But a site like this, looking at the percentage change is, I mean, it's a difference of 70,000, so when it's cut by that amount, it's not, I wouldn't say the percentage difference would be a little misleading in this situation, but maybe I'm talking a little out of place.
No, but, you know, we look at, you know, the income approach.
Right.
I mean, you know, you can, you know, I guess, you can always, you know, do other tests, like a direct sales or something like that,
They
but
would be
basically,
tricky for
you know,
this, but-
yeah, but
yeah.
basically you're after the income. And I guess one of the key things is the cap rate,
Correct.
you know, so.
Yeah, and I suppose we've always been on an aggressive cap rate on this because it's an old cleaner, because of the age. You know what, to answer that question, in 2018, it was we requested a 1075 cap, and it's now 9.5. So, we did make some.
1075?
Correct. So we're not thinking about your comments.
Okay. Oh, all right, okay. That's your presentation, I think, yeah, okay. Mr. Took, summation if you want.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Neufeld?
No, thank you.
All right. We'll go on to 1467 Pembina Highway. Mr. Took, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Property in question, 1467 Pembina Highway, file number 19-4733, roll number 030 700 36500. We have sale information on this property at $1,200,000. When you look at the very top of page 2, this shows us that we sent a mailer out for the 2017 sale and they sent it back to us. And we've also sent mailers for 2016 and 17 income and expense information that they've also sent back to us. So because the sale hasn't been disqualified, we're treating the sale as indicative of market value. However, our assessment is $1,117,000 using parameters. We have leases of restaurants between 1545 square foot and 2099 a square foot. Again, these are these comparisons for the most part are either the same age or newer. Rent comparables as well. The second list, the C2, shows a range of 8 to 1750. Again, especially with the C2, the majority of these properties are newer than the subject. So what we've come up with is $98,571 as our potential rent. We use 6% vacancy, 2% expenses, 6.5% shortfall, and a 7.9 cap rate. If memory serves me correctly, this building is a block and a half south of Clarence, or yeah, almost a block south of Clarence Avenue on Pembina Highway. So the building itself has no real benefit due to being on a corner, other than extra light and maybe some extra side street parking. Based on the information here and the sale that's been presented as evidence, we feel that the assessment of $1,117,000 is a fair and equitable assessment, and we're asking that that value be supported for the 2020 loan. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Neufeld?
Yeah, just quickly, page 2, these are these calculated net rents, or are they just what was showing?
This is what the system comes up with, so give me a moment here, and I'll take a quick peek. It appears they've been entered into our system as net rents. So they are portrayed as net rents. I do note with interest that there's property tax being paid by 4 of the 5 tenants, and CAM costs being paid by all tenants. Utilities being paid by 1 tenant. So the leases that we have shown as net appear to not be net. I'd like to apologize for that.
And no, that's okay, and just for clarity, because we're both
Sure.
looking at it, you've got 53, they're showing 53 cents for tax on Delicious and Best Pizza, whereas Discovery with Lexology and Karen Ann have about 278 taxes, so, and those are also the lowest of the 5 that are showing as net, so I guess you could say that perhaps the taxes aren't fully recovered on the top 3 tenants, correct?
Perhaps,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
It's still my question time, isn't it? Yeah, those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you.
I thank you. Ms. Stevens?
So I'm just, sorry, I'm just gonna go to your pictures, where are they?
Just after,
Yeah, so on page 10, so does this property, like at the bottom of page 10, it shows a different storefront there than the Delicious and the Donaire, and so is that part of this assessment there to the right of the Delicious restaurant or not?
no.
No, it ends there,
The Delicious
yeah.
restaurant is the line there.
That's what I thought, okay. And so the office space that so you've got restaurant, and office, so you've assessed the gaming and the, as office space, or?
Yes, I believe
Even
so.
though it's retail?
Yep,
Okay. Or I'm assuming it's retail?
yeah, we
Okay.
basically treated this all as, I think, as we call it, a store. Stores are when there's no parking in front other than on the street, and sometimes the parking on the street is during rush hour and things like that. A store would have parking only in the rear.
And then the other tenant is a medical office, is that what is that there? Oh, no, maybe not.
Reflex, all.
Oh, right, no, yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. All right, so 'cause I'm just trying to figure out this. Okay, so you said those first 2 were not net, is that what you had?
Well, I believe that there are deductions to be made to all of them.
To all of them, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
um,
all right.
Be it property tax or utilities
Yeah,
or county.
okay. And your rents, yeah. Okay, and your cap, 7.9, 1976 building. Okay, I think that's all I had, thank you.
Thank you.
I thank you. Ms. Linkletter?
Yes, page 2 of your brief, your sale history, the 1.2 million. I'm assuming that's arm's length, you're treating it as arm's length?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Do you have a cap rate associated with that sale?
No cap rate has been done on this sale.
Okay, thank you. And you've given this property 7.9. And it's a 1976 building?
Yes.
And, sorry, I'm just gonna
No, it's okay.
reiterate.
Yep.
And it's not been inspected?
No, this has not been inspected. Sorry, let me put it this way. This may have been inspected, but I'm not aware of when it may have happened, and I haven't inspected it.
Right. Okay. I'm just curious then, sorry, I am gonna bring up just our second property we looked at, which had an effective age of 65, and it was given a cap rate of 7.4. Anyway, that's all my questions.
What was the puck on that property that you're looking at?
I'm sorry, what was that?
The property parcel use. For which property were you comparing?
That was the 1220 Pembina, I believe the former Scotia Bank. Now it's the Gold.
Yeah, you use the
We
7.4.
used the same parcel use, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
It
really
could
wasn't a
be-
question, it was just an
Yeah, no,
observation.
That's fair. It could be, again, a cutoff based on the area. I know that there have been times where a building I have is 4,900 square feet and the cutoff is 5,000 square feet, and they've been, I don't want to say unfairly, but they've been grouped in one way, and maybe the reality shows something in between.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
I thank you. Just offhand, I did a simple calculation in regards to using the city's NOI, and the sale price gives you a cap rate of 7.35.
Ooh. Okay,
All
okay.
right.
Now, having said that, Mr. Chairman, I know that we do cap rates different than the appellant does, so
Yep, just of curiosity.
thank you very much.
Mr. Newfield, the floor is yours.
Thank you. The project, or the subject was purchased by Private Pension Partners, P3, on March 7th, 2017. It was part of a large portfolio sale. They basically built, I think it was about 15 or so properties, don't quote me on that number, but they bought a large portfolio in retail areas that they could essentially build and develop apartments near to. A lot of the portfolio had a few bipolar park, there was some in South Pembina. So this sale was part of a larger acquisition, but it was in order to create a market down the road, and this 1.2 million was the value that was assigned to this property, but that wouldn't be indicative of its actual value. That would just be what was actually assigned to it. It's a bit of a difficult subject to explain. They essentially were purchasing these retail properties in order to, like I said, they're developing many high-rise apartments, and to have more stock close by to what you're already developing, it's just a good business strategy. But when we look at this, we have to then look at what it's actually making in order to fairly assess it at that current point in time. So our analysis came up to 62,477 of net income, and that would be based on my page 4, the 58,000 with the non-operating expenses added back in. Yeah. So the non-operating expenses are added back in for the top line. A vacancy is chosen, and that's based on a 3.9 of strip malls in the entire city, and a specific Fort Garry vacancy of 5.6, and a midpoint of those 2 points for 4.8. And the non-recoverables would be based on those actual non-recoverables that are showing on page 4. And that it's that as well as maintenance So, our cap rate was 875, and that's of course based on site-specific characteristics. We're a bit far off, but by it's 8.7 and 7.9, but for this property, based on the reason it was acquired, the 7.9 to 8.7 is, it's a little more argumentative than it is fact. There is, our valuation is based on the actual characteristics of the building, but if it was purchased for a different reason, then there's potential that the cap rate of 875 would actually go lower depending on that purchase. Still, that being said, we do make our valuation based on that, and we are applying an 8.75, and that would be based on the year built, the lack of parking. Just move that overhead. Yeah, there is about a few spots in the back that would likely be for employees, and mostly street parking that is used for the customers. And the location is not your greatest for retail, as most people are looking to develop in the IKEA range or further North Main. It's by a lot of developments closer to the perimeter. Our shortfall is calculated based on actual taxes, utilities, and an R&M that was as though it was estimated. So that 828 is applied for a value of 562,000 of our capital. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Took?
I do have a question actually this time. The $1.2 million sale price, that was, they paid land transfer fees based on that, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so we received information of a sale with $1.2 million, and according to the return,
I guess that sale was purchased for a potential future development, and for a larger portfolio. So in that portfolio, a lot of the sales there were a lump sum that was paid, and 1.2 was assigned to this. A lot of those properties were pulled apart, higher value, higher demand. So by using the 1.2 million to assess this, you would essentially be almost penalizing these tenants in a way because, let me finish here. Because this purchase was based on external factors that weren't for this site-specific property. So the purchaser saw this as, this wasn't itself purchased for, it wasn't $1.2 million worth of value that the purchaser saw for this site on that portfolio. It was what was assigned. And if it were to actually reach the value of 1.2 million, it would be for future development purposes and something that was much further in the future. I'm explaining it the best of my abilities. It's a tricky thing to analyze, but when we did make our analysis, it's just not worth looking at whatsoever. It was purchased. There's so many variable parts and so many moving parts that this just it just doesn't make sense to assign them that. Fair to mention too, the jump from 704 from 18 to 117. I don't work in your office obviously, but my expectation would be that was based on looking at the sale and then creating an income base backwards. I could be wrong. Please correct me if I am wrong. I know that's not exactly how things work. But if you're chasing a sale based on something that's on future considerations, then there's a disconnect between what it's worth now and what it will be worth. And if we're looking at what it's worth now in order to assess it fairly so the tenants aren't paying more than they should compared to the rest of the city.
was the purchaser under duress when they purchased this?
You could say for this specific site, yes, because he wanted the other ones. Not duress is probably the wrong word, but he didn't want to pay 1.2 million for this. He wanted the other sites, and it was a package deal.
Okay, so the purchaser made the decision to pay $1.2 million for this property.
That was assigned to it based on the entire, that's what land transfer fees were
Okay.
based on. So
Thank
yes.
you very much.
I thank you. Ms. Stevens?
So the rent you've assigned to this property, and I know you say this is based on the actuals, but this is a lower rent than anything else we've seen from you today. This is a pretty highly visible location. Like, you don't have any other comps to back up a rent like that for this location?
This location, well, I do know the building next door, it's an office, but it's not entirely suitable, but they're only getting $10 rents for actual office space next to it at 1463. This is retail. I don't think the $10 is, I mean, we're in a range of what we're presenting is 926 to I think 1154 being our high. That's not the area. Yeah, so a $16 rent is supplied on a much smaller site. Correct. So that's a fair comment, but when we're looking at it, it's the amount of money it's actually capable of generating. If you want to kick out tenants and charge someone else more money, then maybe they could, but they aren't at this point, and that's not what's happening on the site. So. And I would also contend if you're kicking it, or to get another tenant wouldn't be a significantly higher. You wouldn't be seeing a significantly higher rental rate for that without doing a significant amount of work to it. So.
Okay, and this building is a 76, so newer than a lot of the ones we've seen today, and yet you have an 8.75 cap on it?
Yeah.
Which is, again, near the higher end of what you...
Yeah, I guess there was quite a big deduction for quality and condition. I think that's a little...
But you haven't been inside?
I haven't myself, and I think when this was... I'm gonna give him a smack for this one. I don't think the 3 and 4 is that... The quality and condition is not as bad as it's being...
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I had, thank you.
I thank you. Ms. Linklater?
Yeah, I'm just curious, you were saying that the sale of 1.2
Correct.
is not really indicative of what the purchaser,
No, it was purchased for a myriad of other reasons.
Okay.
And that was the price that was assigned to it.
right. So, just curious, because you keep using that word assigned, who assigned the price? Because I'm assuming it was a bulk purchase,
Yes,
several properties
correct, yeah.
with, say, a much larger number?
Yeah, like I think it was a excess of 40 million sale for the entire portfolio. That's a good question. I will find out. I don't know how that one went to this chosen.
Because I'm assuming it's not the owner who is
No.
dividing up the prices for all the various properties.
I mean,
So this, sorry, I'm
Yeah,
going
that's
to
okay.
suggest then that this price of 1.2 had to be agreed upon between
correct, but there
the
was.
seller and the buyer.
Right, the buyer did want the entire portfolio though. He's building apartments next to a lot of the higher good ones. If it's a package deal and it has the potential of going under because of one property, it's not gonna make a whole lot of sense when you get the lending for the 40 million. I know, I realize your point, and that's fair. I think the point I'm trying to come across is it's just not reliable for us for using to assess. It is what was paid, but it's not, like a value was put on it for land transfer, and that was what it was. So I'm not doing the best job of explaining it. In reality though, you would never, even the assessment department hasn't brought it forward, they're not using this as a cap, so there's a reason for that. I mean, sorry.
I've been to a number of hearings where, I'm sorry, this isn't even
Please.
a comment, okay, but I've been to a number of hearings where I go back to my boss and say, why did we use this for a cap rate?
And I mean, I say I could do the same thing and go back to Rocky, and then there's so many, this isn't black and white, obviously, so that's.
Oh, agreed, it's so driven by opinion, you know?
Right, and it's adversarial opinions at times too, so it can be.
This is an aside as well, but I just finished 3 dockets of convenience stores. On my last day of dockets, I come across one that's sold with a current rent. Well, what? It's just the kind of information I could have used to base on my last 3 days, and I find out the last day, oh, we didn't have time to do everything.
Yeah.
So I apologize for any shortcomings.
Yeah, no, and it is what it is, I mean,
Yep.
I'd love to, we should have Rocky and Kelly come in here and start.
Oh, yeah, that would be great. You could sell tickets to that one.
Agreed.
I'd make the popcorn.
That's all my questions, thank you.
All right, Mr. Took, summary if you wish?
No, sir.
No, Phil? No?
No, thank you.
Okay. Let's go on to St. Mary's Road, 1004, whenever you're ready, Mr. Took.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Property in question, 1004 St. Mary's Road, file number 19-4686, roll number 0800366850. Slightly off the cuff, Mr. Chairman, this property I had with the other Mr. Newfeld a couple of cycles ago. And there's structural issues in this building. I don't know specifically what they are. I think it's a basement issue. Sorry, not a basement issue, a pad issue. I remember seeing $50,000 cost to cure on it.
That's in their brief.
I don't know if it's in the brief. I
Okay.
couldn't say that.
I'm just looking at the highlights of theirs,
Super.
and they're talking about building had structural damage, repair quote 50,000. Okay.
If I could direct your attention to page 10, we are looking at the rear loading of the property in question. You can see there's about a foot difference in elevation here. All things considered, the building's still being used, but there are issues specific to this building that make me want to treat it differently than perhaps the way we have. We've used a rent of $12.72 a square foot. Last assessment, I think there was a verbal recommendation at $11 a square foot that was accepted. The previous one, the one that I had, I believe I made a recommendation of $10 a square foot on it at the time. If you look at my my comparison leases, you're looking at a range of $9.60 a square foot up to $12 a square foot. Now, these are for properties without $50,000 of structural issues involved. I'm confident that a value of $10 a square foot for the rent would be more fair than what we've used on it. And I feel that a rent of $10 a square foot would be more in line with market value. I happen to look at the age of the building here as of 1981, and the cap rate is 6.9%. With respect, the 6.9% cap rate is probably aggressive based on the structural issues with the property. I've not discussed any specific changes with my supervisor, okay? But having said that, I'm comfortable with $10 being the rent. I'm not comfortable with $6.90 being the cap rate. Thank you very much. That's the presentation.
Mr. Took, would you be willing to state a figure?
Certainly, give me a moment, sir.
Please do, because I have no idea what to ask you based on those comments.
Fair enough, and let's calculate it out. You can let me know if it's reasonable.
No, yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay.
Can I just discuss the structural damage while he does that?
Certainly,
Okay.
please.
If he's gonna work on the figure.
Let him do it.
But,
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
okay. I would sooner wait.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I've completed my calculations. At a rent of $10 per square foot and a cap of 7.5%, with the other, the vacancy and shortfall and expenses remaining the same, I come to a value of $213,000.
213?
Yes, sir, and that's based on an NOI of $15,950.
I recalculated it and came to the same conclusions.
Is that a recommendation, Mr. Duke?
You know, I
Or you can leave it with us.
I would prefer to leave it with you
Yes.
if that's acceptable to you,
Okay.
sir.
Mr. Newfield, any discussion?
I think the assessor's comments are fair. That would be a reasonable value, and we would have no problem with it.
Okay.
The structural, this is actually my uncle's place. The structural damage was, I shouldn't laugh at this, but 10, 15 years ago, someone fell asleep at the wheel after a day surgery and drove right into it and then died. And then that was the structural damage, and on top of that, the floor sinking is an entirely different issue, because it's just, it's a really rough building.
So you have no problem with that value?
The 217 is a fair value. 213.
213?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Stevens, any questions?
The structural damage has not been corrected?
It has, but it's not like it's not perfect from it. It's been,
So
yeah, there was
there's
an
been some
insurance
work,
claim,
but
of
there's
course, yes,
still an issue.
Yes, but it's not, you can see where the car hit it, really. It's like you're looking at it and you go, what's happened there? It's like, well, a car drove through it. I worked there for a good 3 years and made a lot of jokes about it. Not, so I shouldn't say jokes, it's not funny, but it's a strange
Okay.
situation, I should say.
Okay, thanks. That's all I have.
Thank you. Ms. Linkletter, any?
No questions.
All right. I don't think we have to have a summation. Okay, let's go on to the last one on the docket, which is 996 St. Mary's Road. Mr. Cook, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Property in question, file number 19-4505. Excuse me. Roll number 0800366950. Address 996 St. Mary's Road. Mr. Chairman, the property in question was built in 2011. We have a planned area of 1,975 square feet and a basement area of 1,125 square feet. If you look at the list of sales between 2003 and 2009, it doesn't apply to this property because the property was demolished and a new property was built in 2011. So the sales history doesn't really reflect anything of use to any of us. The comparables which I have here for basement is $585 square foot to $10.10 a square foot. Quite a range, and then again, you know, one's for 1,000 square feet, the other one's for 9,500 square feet. I haven't inspected this property. I haven't, as far as I know, driven by this property either. We've used $19.28 a square foot on the main floor. I have comparisons showing 1975 up to $23 a square foot. The basement, substandard basement, we've used $5.05 a square foot. This is an assumption that I'm making, but my assumption is that a basement built in 2011 would be more usable than a basement built in the 50s or 30s or 70s. Having said that though, I imagine with this case, there's no separate egress or ingress to the property, that the basement would, for lack of a better term, be included in whoever's using the main floor. So we've used a valuation of $579,000 based on $5 a square foot in basement, $19.28 on the main floor, 6% vacancy, 2% expense, 6.75% cap rate, which on an 8-year-old building seems reasonable to me in this neighborhood. So I am asking that the board confirm the $579,000 for the 2020 reassessment. The reason I haven't used any of the subject property less lease information, and I could be corrected by the appellant here, is that when I see the owner is CJL Holdings and the tenant is CJL Catering, my assumption is that they're related parties and that the income and expense mailer would possibly show book rent as opposed to a real market-driven rent. Now, having said that, we have received a correction to the information that was sent in to us, that the information which was shown as net originally, the owner sent us a letter saying that they hit the net by accident, that it should have been gross, and the letter here that I have is saying from the owner, please change income type to gross. Now, having said that, I consider this rent an internal rent or a book rent, and I haven't used it at all in my estimation of value. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Newfield, question?
Yeah, did your system show anything for, just, I have to make this as a statement, I don't know how else to do it. The foundation is from 1924.
That could be.
Do you have any, is there any way that you can address that in the system? Because obviously it's strange, it was built in 2011, but the foundation was kept. And I'll get into that. But would that, if that were an adjustment made, would that not make the effective year somehow older than the actual year built, in a way? And it's just, I'm not saying that it should be that or the way, I'm just kind of, as a discussion point.
You know, there's nowhere on my system to show me specifically if the basement has been reused. It should reflect as a change in the effective year built, theoretically, if it has been recognized.
Then it would have to go older than the actual, so that's why.
And that would throw an error into the system.
Right,
That'd be,
right. You couldn't put the actual as 1924. I guess you could put the actual
and you
1924
could,
and then
but
the effective.
yeah,
That's
that
weird.
wouldn't be
Yeah.
fair either.
Yeah.
I guess really, I guess to cut to the chase on that one, the owner would have received some sort of assurances, and I'm assuming here, assurances from qualified people such as engineers or whatever to show that the basement can hold the structure in place.
Sure, yeah.
So it may be that the building is quite a bit older, like the basement is quite a bit older.
Right.
I'm treating it as though it's the same age.
And then you mentioned that you believe the owner and the tenant are the same. Did you do any company's branch on that at all, or no? Just based on the name?
I
Yeah.
just based it on the name,
Okay.
CJL Holdings.
Yeah, no, that's a fair assumption.
CJL Catering.
You're not gonna believe me when I say it's not, but I didn't listen.
Oh, hey, you're under affirmation. It's all good.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens?
Further to the question about the basement, if indeed it was the original basement, the rental rate for that would likely come down? Or their cap might change, or both?
Well.
Or that section would come down, yeah.
Bear with me for a moment. If I'm investing, let's call it 800,000, although it could be higher than that, in a new building, that basement better be as good as new, or else for an extra 50 grand, I'll just knock it out and put in a new basement. So you may choose to reflect the age of the building as being hindered somehow by the basement. That's possible. I can't speak to that. I can't even speak to the fact that the basement's been reused. Having said that.
Okay, fair enough, yep.
Okay.
And you believe the rent, that this is not an arm's length, potentially not an arm's length rent, and your comps are, your actual rent is actually a little lower than your comps that you provide.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I had, thanks.
I thank you. Ms. Langfetter?
My questions have been asked and answered, thank you.
I have no questions. Mr. Newfield, your presentation?
Thank you. The building was purchased by CDL Holdings in 2009 with the plan to basically tear it, 2009, yeah, completely redevelop it. They were planning on keeping the entirety of the structure. There was a major structural issue that I worked next door to it, but I was like 20 at the time, so I wasn't paying much attention. But I'm trying to I was looking in the hole all the time. I do know. Okay, sorry. Let me get back to that. But CJL Holdings, CJL Catering purchased the building and with the intent to operate its business out of there. She then sold the business to a complete arm's length person. I don't know how she sold it, but the business was sold, and then now is charging rent to this second party. So the rent that is in place is an actual paid rent. She operated the business for a few years and then got out of catering and is now a real estate agent. So they sold the business and then with it also leased the site to the new business owner. This, in our evaluation, is being treated as a 1924, and that is not entirely appropriate. The assessor seems to be making all these, well, maybe should be a little higher or lower, so I guess I can do it too. A 9 is too high for this site. A 9% wouldn't sell for 9%. It's a foundation from 1924, but the majority of the building was redone, and it is not in poor quality in there, and it's a kitchen. The 1154, however, is an actual paid rent, and that, just want to double check that. Sorry, just a calculation. Sorry, just bear with me for a moment. I apologize. So I'm calculating a bit different of a number, 25,684. So I'm just going to adjust it. It's going to take some time here. I'm calculating an annual or net income of 25,684. And that's based on the mailer that the assessment department has provided, just taking out the mortgage. Those costs are paid by them. Apologies. So I get an NOI of 23,000,
23?
23,100.
Okay. Cap?
And the cap is, I would think, I suppose an 8 would be more applicable for this. And the reason being said, when my brother does these, he obviously looks at it in the fact that the foundation is original. He was treating it fully as an original. I've been in this building, I know that it's not as bad as a 1924 building. The basement is not, the foundation is the same. Now, there's some comments that the assessors had said that if you're redoing this building, it would make absolutely no sense to not to put the extra 50,000 into the basement to make it usable. That's a bit of fairness there, but in reality, this was never a project that was meant to get this huge.
So you're at 289?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
289.
And that's it?
And yeah, so then the cap is just based on, adjusting it based on the actual showing age.
Okay. Mr. Took, questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With the 1924 foundation, I'm guessing it was reasonably solid? Like, I'm hoping it's reasonably solid?
Yeah, cause it was, like, she just wanted to completely renovate, and it was because of code upgrades, they had to redo it completely. So they just tried to salvage as much as possible, and it was just the foundation that they could salvage. So, but it obviously was solid, because if you're ripping out the whole thing, you're not gonna put a crowd in it.
Okay, thank you very much. No further questions, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens?
Just that your picture's on page 3 of the base, so it,
Right, okay, sorry, I didn't realize I had pictures, okay.
yeah, so it looks like they're using it to do some cooking and things down there, even though.
No, sorry, that's, first page is upstairs, actually, the second.
This is up,
The
page 3 is upstairs.
top is upstairs,
Top is
bottom
upstairs?
is the basement, yes. So that would likely be a
Okay, so
6 foot,
these ovens are not in the basement?
No.
Okay.
Oh, and then, sorry, on my page 4 is a picture of it being.
Of it being, yeah, that I think, okay. Now, in terms of the rent, that's actually being paid, although it may no longer be owner occupied in the business part, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily, to me, I'm just wondering if you would see this as arm's length, given that
It's tricky, I mean.
the owner sold the business to this
Right.
person, and probably I'm assuming the lease was maybe negotiated as part of that.
Yes, but they are now completely separate.
It is separate, but
So
not
now-
necessarily completely arm's length.
No, but to say, I mean, I wouldn't imagine she was giving them cheaper rent because they bought her business. So that is, yes, that is a fair comment, but I don't think it's,
Okay.
it's not, it's still an at this point, it is arm's length because she sold the business completely. Now the lease is.
But the lease hasn't changed
Uh,
since the sale happened, has it, or has it?
It was from 13, so.
Okay, I don't have anything else, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Linklater?
Yes, in regards to this foundation basement, page 3 of your brief, the bottom page, I am assuming then that this basement was all repoured.
Yes, but as you can see, it's not, like, I wish we had the person for scale there, but I would imagine that crossbeam would hit Paul's head.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that too. It
Yeah.
looks
Yeah.
lower than 6
So
feet.
the height looks. okay.
They did not want to spend more money on this. It was a project that was meant to spend 50,000 and it ended up being in excess of 200, so.
Right.
It should they have made the basement higher maybe, but it's not.
Yeah, but the mechanicals all look new,
Yeah.
relatively,
Yes,
certainly
yes.
on page
Yeah, so
3.
like I said, the 1924, we had treated this as 1924 and that's not fair.
Do you know what the foundation was? It's hard to tell on page 4.
I did
I'm
not
gonna
know.
say it's cement.
Yeah, I think it's board. But for 24, that's. It is not, I mean, it's clearly less than 6 feet, so the basement wouldn't be up to market potential, but I'm not trying to say that the basement is completely from 1924, because it was obviously, there was work done on it in
Right.
order to make it up to code, obviously, so the foundation is up to code, if that
Yes.
answers the question.
Well, I was just wondering if you knew. Does
Yeah,
it
it would
look
have-
like stone? I'm assuming it's a
Yeah,
wood foundation.
I don't know.
And you're stating that, oh, and you're not using the basement at all?
No, as it is, it would be too short, too low to rent.
Right, and the city has assigned, yeah, $5.05. Okay, that's all my questions, thank you.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, Mr. Newfield, I'm just looking at the city's square footage, which is 3,100, and you're at the 1928, so of square foot. So basically, you're saying that you're not considering the basement, it's part of the package deal?
Correct, and that is as the rent is paid, and that is also because it is not separately demisable.
Okay.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Yep.
Sorry, Mr.
No,
Neufeld,
it's okay.
I had to ask this, you brought this before the board last time?
Correct,
Did you?
yes, it was
Yeah, I see,
confirmed and repeated,
okay.
And where's it at now?
still pending.
But it's at the municipal board?
Correct, yes.
Thank you. Anything?
Okay, well, I'm just curious then, what were you asking for a cap rate last time?
It was 8.5, so obviously there was more consideration for the fact that it was newer back then. That was me doing that, I remember that, this is my brother doing the December, I swear.
Okay, thank you.
Summation on either party?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Newfield?
Thank you.
Okay, I think that concludes our hearing. Mr. Newfield?
Thank you.
Thank you very kindly, and results very soon.